we're moving on in King Lear. We have to make some little progress here because I got stuck in Act 1 because thematically King Lear is, I think, quite a complex and rich play, although it is rooted in many of the same themes, and I talked repeatedly about how I think legitimacy is one of the themes of the play, one of the key question marks of it, but the word legitimacy, although it is used and it's invoked by Edmund when he's disgusted by the legitimacy of his brother and his lack thereof, the main word that's used is this word nature. It's used over and over and over and over again, and on not just nature but the words unnatural and such connate words. So I'm going to pick up a little bit on that front, and I suggested already that I think in the very first lecture that each of the plays, although it's not a religious play, the setting is in a pagan setting, and obviously Shakespeare is not a pagan and his audience is not either. But that doesn't really bother Shakespeare, putting anachronistic views in other parts, so putting Christian views in a pagan setting. He does the same thing when he does his Roman plays and his Greek plays as well. Basically, you have Englishmen speaking in a Greek setting or in a Roman setting. He doesn't that the anachronism doesn't bother him. It does beg the question of why he does change the settings like that, and why does he place Macbeth in with that supernatural setting, and why is he exploring it from so many different angles? That's a different question. But it is a Christian world. It's not a Christian world, rather, it's a pagan world, but the characters are reflected upon by Shakespeare's Christian audience. And the speakers within the play, of which there are many, seem to have very different worldviews, to use our language, not theirs. And they have a sort of a natural religion in the sense that it arises out of the different natures of the characters, their vantage point. And furthermore, I said last time, I think, that the views of some characters, and in particular King Lear, changes. Others are more static, but Lear changes and his view of nature changes as the play progresses. And one of the things that is particularly of note, so at the outset I said he's an outright pagan. Almost. He seems to see, invoke the gods. By the way, invoking the gods doesn't really say much. It can be just like these days people swear by calling upon Jesus' name. It's just a regular swear word. They're not actually expressing any sort of belief. They'll say, oh God, or OMG, that sort of thing. They're not really, it's part of the cultural language, and they're using the words, but there's nothing more to it really than that. It still might be blasphemous, but it's not expressing a particular viewpoint, other than, I guess, it's expressing their indifference to words and the meaning of words, and that there's any importance to the words. It might be expressing that, but not intentionally expressing something there. But Lear undergoes, from that stage when he strips himself of his authority and his power by giving it out to his daughters in that ridiculous game where he renders them all equal, and now signal your virtue to me. Tell me how much you love me. And it's a ridiculous game. I mean, he doesn't go by, in Shakespeare's day, one of the ways in which kingship was decided was primogeniture, so the firstborn would inherit the crown. That's a natural way of doing it. It's a legitimate way of doing it. He could have done it in a meritocracy sort of way. I mean, it wouldn't have been typical of the day, but he could have said, well, the one who loves me best is Cordelia, and everyone knows that she's my favorite as well, so I'm going to give her more. That would cause problems, presumably, but at least there would be something that you could, that would be discriminate and fair about those two things. The game of equality that he sets is ridiculous. I mean, it's just pretense. They're acting, but there's no there's nothing underneath it. There's no genuine integrity involved in it, and as a result, Cordelia refuses to participate in it, which is an interesting response. She's almost the antithetical character to Lear in that sense, and everyone else for that matter. She will not participate in this. And as a result, as I say, she gets banished from the kingdom, and likewise Kent, who tries to intervene. And so Lear is stripped of all things that will have made his life bearable. Love, legitimacy, and the pious reverence which the young owe to the old. This word piety is not in the play, but it's very much lamented when it's lost, that the young, his daughters, do not have any reverence for him anymore. Once he's lost his power, there's no need for them to fear, and they don't fear, and they do all manner of things. And likewise, Edmund seems to have no reverence for his father. Gloucester, to be fair, in both cases, Gloucester and in Lear, they have not been very reverent themselves. I just talked about what Lear did in dispossessing himself of his kingdom, but Gloucester likewise was, mocking or joking about the circumstances of Edmund's conception. His mother was good sport, that sort of thing. And so therefore his parentage in some ways was just as sound as his brother's, but he's legitimate and he's illegitimate. And so what do you expect Edmund rather to think, other than that this is unfair? This is totally unfair. Like a same father, different mother, he's legitimate, I'm illegitimate, I have nothing, so I'm a bastard. In this day, a bastard is a pejorative term. It's not just a legal definition. It's, people are treating him shamefully, even though he is obviously a well-bred, that word even, a well-bred, well-mannered individual. And so all of those things are getting pulled apart here. Manners, nature, breeding. It ought to be the case that nature and morals go together. Lear has pulled them apart. Not just pulled them apart, he's severed all bounds there. And so now he is left without any of the, I would say, the social architecture that has preserved him as an old man, because now he's old and he's weak. The man is 80 years old. What's he going to do? He's dependent on everyone else. And yet he's ripped away all moral standing in the kingdom. And so what we see, and I'm going to say more about this as we go through this, the two Act 2 and Act 3, he moves more towards a Stoic stance towards nature. So let me just say a little bit briefly about that, about what a Stoic view of life is, because you will know this viewpoint, at least have heard of it. To be a Stoic is to be, stiff upper lip, that sort of thing. That's the common use of it, to be stoic in the face of adversity. But it's referred to in the book of Acts. These were two of the philosophical schools that the Apostle Paul encountered on Mars Hill in Acts 17. The Stoics and the Epicureans, right? And they were, and the Stoics were quite an appealing branch of philosophy, I have to say, insofar as the Stoics are really a very viable way of dealing with what Dr. Jordan Peterson keeps talking about, the reality of life, that life sucks, and life is hard, and life is brutal, and you are going to get knocked down, and that goes with it. So how are you going to face life? The Stoics have an answer to that, and it's an answer that was embraced across the social strata. So the most famous Stoic was the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. If you ever watched the film Gladiator, he's the emperor, and he was famous as a Stoic, and he wrote, and he was the philosopher king, the philosopher emperor. He wrote as a Stoic and talked about dealing with life's vicissitudes, with the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, about bearing up under that and acting in the same way. So not losing just because life is hard doesn't mean that you lose your balance in life. There's an inner tranquility with that. So that's one representative. Another was the famous playwright Seneca, who was a satirist, philosopher, and even a teacher. He was a teacher to Nero. But he was also a Stoic. And if you think about how crazy Nero was, and infamously crazy, and the age in which he must have lived, and writing his satires, and to maintain that stoicism in the midst of all that, again, good representative. And the third, and also in some ways most powerful, is a slave by the name of Epictetus. And he is equally a fine representative there. But so you've got everyone from an emperor to a teacher, playwright to a slave, all of them adopting this stance towards life in which what really matters is their own spiritual equanimity. This is the phrase that would be used. Equanimity of spirit. Animus here being the spirit, and the equality, the balance, not being thrown off by external things. So Lear begins as a pagan, but having stripped himself of all external trappings of majesty and divested himself of his role in the kingdom even. He's not a king anymore. What is he exactly? He has nothing to lean upon other than some sort of internalized sense of order. And so he pulls himself in this direction, and he becomes more patient. And in fact, this is one of the themes about that rises out of this play, is the need for Lear to develop patience. In fact, his speaking against Cordelia was called rash. Be not so rash. He's an old man. You're not supposed to be so hot-blooded. Don't make this decision. He tries to stop. Kent tries to stop him from doing this crazy thing. And he won't, and he can't, and he regrets it. In fact, there's back in Act 1, Scene 4, line, I was just reading before I came in today, 266, he says, "O most small fault, how ugly didst thou in Cordelia show, which like an engine wrenched my frame of nature from the fixed place, drew from my heart all love, and added to the gall. O Lear, 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 beat at this gate and let thy folly in," striking his head, "and thy dear judgment out." So he's regretting his own nature, his tendency to be irascible and to lose his cool and to do something crazy, and it's too late. But patience is something he's going to learn. Now, the word patience here, we know what patience means. It means, being slow to anger, being, a slow boil. But it literally has to do with suffering. This word patience is rooted it's the same root of the word passion, in the sense of the Christian sense of the passion of the Christ, the suffering of the Christ. It's the sufferer of an action. He's gone away from being the primary agent of action in the play as the king to now having no agency. He has no capacity to act, at least not effectively. He's like a child. He has to suffer everyone else's action. This is what makes everyone. I've heard people say, wouldn't it be nice to go back to being like a baby and everyone loves you and you're cooing and cawing? And I think, yeah, but babies get angry all the time. I mean, they get red-faced because they can't do anything. They can't speak, they can't, and yet they have a sense that they would like to do things and get angry about it, and they lose it, right? Do you really want to go back to being, well, you'll be like that eventually. You'll be an old person. That's what it's going to be like, except that you will know what you once had, the faculties to do the things that other people are doing, and you might have been more just than the people who are stronger than you. And now you're dependent on them. You better be patient at that point. It comes with age. But here he's doing it not naturally. It's not a natural decline. It is a decision that he makes, a willful and arbitrary divesting of his power and authority, and on the basis of for no good reason other than this virtue signaling. So Lear is going to learn something about himself. And I said, and the reason I'm talking about this is the tragedy of King Lear. What is the tragedy? Granted, bad things happen. There's injustice and so forth. But what is the actual tragedy if it's about King Lear? I think it's that he begins so badly, he starts to learn patience of necessity, and as he goes on, as he starts to rehabilitate himself, just at that point, his daughter is taken from him. And the possible restoration, which was there, because remember, what we'll see this next time when we come to our last lecture on King Lear, the King of France and Cordelia have invaded, and there was hope that they might have overthrown these two wretched sisters. There was hope there, but now the hope is gone, and then poor Cordelia is hanged. And Lear, rather than being restored to some sort of a new birth, is himself a broken man. I think that there's something in that. So, but it's very much of an internal recovery even then that was there. He was never going to get back into the position of being king. That was never on the cards. But he might have been restored to being a loving father and having a loving daughter look after him, as would be natural and pious. So with all that said, let's go to Act 2 and see how this carries forth. Now remember, Act 2 is the subplot, or working out the subplot. The majority of Act 1. Act 1, Scene 2 announces the subplot with Edmund and Edgar. Act 2, Scene 1 picks that up, and I'm going to read a little bit of that because it we'll see it then at least put into motion. Remember, Edmund had resolved to supplant his brother Edgar by deceiving his father, so he's going to use fraud and misrepresent things, and his father is going to think that he is the faithful, loyal son, and his brother is the opposite, is a traitor. And then he will dispossess his natural and legitimate son and loyal son from all authority, and he will confer on the illegitimate, the genuinely illegitimate, but now also immoral son Edmund. That's the plan, which he's already set in place. So enter bastard Edmund and Curran severally, independently. And Edmund says, "Save thee, Curran," as in God save thee. "And you, sir, I have been with your father and given him notice that the Duke of Cornwall and Regan his Duchess will be here with him this night." "How comes that?" said Edmund. Curran, "Nay, I know not. You have heard of the news abroad. I mean the whispered ones, for they are yet but ear-bussing arguments." "Not I. Pray you, what are they?" "Have you heard of no likely wars toward twixt the Dukes of Cornwall and Albany?" "Not a word." "You may do that. You may do then in time. Fare you well, sir." So already, Act 2, Scene 1, we already have news abroad. It's like the news overseas can sometimes be more reliable than that which is within the country. Already, the kingdom is divided in two between Goneril and Regan, but it's not going to stay that way. One of them is going to want supremacy. So there are already rumors of a war coming within England. Anyway, Edmund's response to this: "The Duke be here tonight? The better! Best! This weaves itself perforce into my business. My father hath set guard to take my brother, and I have one thing of a queasy question which I must act. Briefness and fortune work. Brother, a word, descend. Brother, I say." Note he appeals to fortune, just random chance. Again, he lives in a world where there's no order, there's no providence, there's no moral authority. It's just random acts, and it's just who will seize upon the opportunity when it presents itself to him. And he's going to do it now. Opportunist. Now Edgar comes in and he says, "My father watches. Oh, sir." And he acts as if he's his friend, advising him, giving him counsel in his best interest. And of course, Edgar, having no reason to doubt that his brother Edmund should want any ill to come to him, agrees to do it without question. "Oh, sir, fly this place. Intelligence is given where you are hid. You have now the good advantage of the night. Have you not spoken against the Duke of Cornwall? He's coming hither, now of the night, in the haste, and Regan with him. Have you nothing said upon his party against the Duke of Albany? Advise yourself." "I am sure on it, not a word. I hear my father coming. Pardon me, in cunning, I must draw my sword upon you." "Draw. Seem to defend yourself. Now, quit you well." "Yield!" And notice how once he's away, he shouts out, "Yield! Come before my father! Light! Ho, here! Fly, brother! Torches! Torches! So, farewell." "Some blood drawn on me would beget opinion," he sticks himself in the arm, "of my more fierce endeavor. I have seen drunkards do more than this in sport. Father! Father! Stop! Stop! No help!" And then Gloucester comes in with the servants, and they've got their torches with them. "Now, Edmund, where's the villain? Here stood he in the dark, his sharp sword out, mumbling of wicked charms, conjuring the moon to stand suspicious mistress. But where is he? Look, sir, I bleed. Where is the villain, Edmund? Fled this way, sir, when by no means he could. Pursue him! Ho, go after! By no means what? Persuade me to the murder of your lordship. But that I told him the revenge of gods 'gainst parricides did all the thunder bend. Spoke with how manifold and strong a bond the child was bound to the father. Sir, in fine, seeing how loathly opposite I stood to his unnatural purpose, in fell motion with his prepared sword, he charges home my unprovided body, larched mine arm, and when he saw my best alarm spirits, bold in the quarrel's right, roused to the encounter, or whether gasted by the noise I made, full suddenly he fled. Let him fly far, says Gloucester. Not in this land shall he remain uncaught and found. Dispatch. The noble Duke, my master, my worthy arch and patron, comes tonight. By his authority I will proclaim it, that he which finds him shall deserve our thanks, bringing the murderous coward to the stake. He that conceals him, death. Edmund. When I persuaded him from his intent and found him pight to do it, with cursed speech I threatened to discover him, he replied, Thou, unpossessing bastard, dost thou think, if I would stand against thee, would the reposal of any trust, virtue, or worth in thee make thy words faithed? Would anyone believe you? You're a bastard. No. What I should deny, as this I would, aye, though thou didst produce my very character, I'd turn it all to thy suggestion. Plot and damned practice, I'd say it was you that plotted all this. And thou must make a dullard of the world, if they not thought the prophets of my death were very pregnant and potential spirits to make thee seek it. So now he's imputed to Edgar the very thing that he is in fact doing. They would just say, this, who's going to believe you? I'm the natural one. There's no reason why I should do this. I'll say that you hatched it all up. Oh, strange and fastened villain, would he deny his letter? Said he, I never got him. And then he's got it in his, like the letter which Edmund has produced earlier, that hark the Duke's trumpet. So he's judging on the basis of appearances, and Edmund has managed to hoodwink his father. At the end of this, though, this little speech in his Gloucester here, line 84, he says, loyal and natural boy, I'll work the means to make thee capable. So now, the natural Edgar is considered to be unnatural, disloyal, disingenuous, fraudulent, and murderous, and the Edmund, on the other hand, is now the loyal and natural boy. Total treachery, total betrayal, but now what was legitimate is now illegitimate, and likewise. On what? On the basis of the judgment of the Father again. I think we're a little bit more sympathetic towards Gloucester than we are to Lear, because he's at least deceived by a villain. Whereas Lear, we see no reason for this other than his own poor character, which seems to be characteristic of him furthermore. So that's the subplot, and we now see foils emerging in different ways. Now, I said in some ways Edmund is a bit like Lear in the sense that he places no value on virtue or on nature. It's just arbitrary willfulness. That's how he sees the world. On the other hand, we can also see a clear correspondence between King Lear the father and Gloucester the father and the children of both, right? And the legitimacy and illegitimacy. So the plot and the subplot work to reinforce one another. So that's here at this point. I'll skip over this, but now Cornwall and Regan and the attendants come in and they explain what's going on. Scene 2, Kent is still pursuing, if you remember we left off last time, Oswald, who had been charged to basically be rude to the king and his attendants in order to provoke him. You know, be intentionally rude to them so that they feel unwelcome. I want them to go away. I want the king to be put in his place. Note how unloving the action is. Like it's deliberately hurtful. That doesn't mean that she wants the outcome that will come about to come about, but she certainly wants the king to be put down and removed, further stripped of his power. So he has all of these attendants, 100 of them knights. She wants the knights to be gone so that he really is powerless, because at the moment he still has some power because he has knights who will protect him. So we're going to remove all of those things, because at the moment you're a baby with a hammer. You got to get the hammer away from you before you hurt somebody. But he has no legitimacy left, and there's no reverence. That for sure is gone. So we get Kent and Oswald. They meet one another, and Kent is speaking to him in terms that don't really make a lot of sense now. So 15, Oswald, what dost thou know me for? A knave, a rascal, an eater of broken meats, a base, proud, shallow, beggarly, three-suited, 100-pound, filthy worsted, stalking knave, a lily-livered, action-taking, whoreson, glass-gazing, superserviceable, finical rogue, one-trunk inheriting slave, one that would be a bawd in way of good service, and art nothing but the composition of a knave, beggar, coward, pander, and the son and heir of a mongrel bitch. One whom I will beat into clamorous whining if thou deniest the least syllable of thy addition. So, that's pretty good insulting.
And if you memorize that and call him, oh wait, no.
Yes, don't dare. All of those things. So it's just a torrent of abuse. And of course, there's no verse here as well. It's just common. I'm going to treat you with the abuse that you deserve. So if there's going to be no ceremony here, there's no sort of manners, it's just, I'm going to attack you. So it's back and forth. And then there's a fight that begins. Kent, who is incensed at the treatment of his master. And at that point, then Cornwall and Regan come on the scenes and they see what has just happened. And they have to explain themselves. And the upshot of it all is that Kent is going to be put in stocks. I mentioned that last time. But he's put in stocks, and and Cornwall says that as I have life, this is line Act 2, Scene 2, as I have life and honor, there shall he sit till noon. 133. And then Regan, till noon, till night, my lord, and all night too. And then Kent, Why, madam, if I were your father's dog, you should not use me so. Sir, being his knave, I will. So she wouldn't treat his dog that badly, but she will treat one of his gentlemen. She wants to humiliate him. And she doesn't want to humiliate him. She wants to humiliate her father. Why does she hate her father so much? How come? I'm not even sure. She's her bad character is evident here. She wants to abase her father, to denigrate him, and to make an example of him. So I'm going to torture his servant. We'll stick him in stocks. So his feet and his hands are there, and they're literally in this wooden contraption, and it's agonizing. And he's going to stay there, and he's an older man as well. He's not going to bear up under this very well. And then Cornwall says, this is a fellow of the self-same color our sister speaks of. Come, bring away the stocks. And then Gloucester intervenes. Remember, Gloucester is a nobleman, but he's a lesser nobleman in the kingdom, because we now have Cornwall and Albany. They're the most powerful dukes in the kingdom. The Duke of Gloucester is a lesser aristocrat, but all the same. Let me beseech your grace not to do so. His fault is much, and the good king his master will check him for it. Your purposed low correction is such as basest and most contemned wretches for pilferings and most common trespasses are punished with. The king must take it ill that he so slightly valued in his messenger should have him thus restrained. And Cornwall, I'll answer that. Regan, my sister may receive it much more worse to have her gentleman abused, assaulted for following her affairs. Put in his legs. Come, my lord, away. So, what's the response? If I don't do this, my sister will take it even worse. So it's the power consideration. It's not a virtue consideration. It's not what's right. It's what will the consequences be if I don't do this? So now that's the only consideration. Power is all that operates in this kingdom, and both sisters abase others for the sake of power, and they will also abase themselves and betray their husbands, because both of them, as we're about to find out, fancy Edmund and want to cheat on their husbands. And both of them are envious of the other for that, so then it ends up being this quarrel amongst the girls over who's going to get the handsome young Edmund, who's a villain. And he plays them furthermore. So it descends into quite a depraved situation very rapidly. And this all began with Lear's rash act. So I'll move away from that unless you have comments or questions about this, and I'll move on to scene 3, because then we get to see Edgar's response to all this. No? Okay. So Edgar, Act 2, Scene 3, enter. I heard myself proclaimed, he says, and by the happy hollow of a tree escaped the hunt. So he's hidden inside of a tree. No port is free, no place that guard and most unusual vigilance does not attend my taking. Whilst I may escape, I will preserve myself, and am bethought to take the basest and most poorest shape that ever penury in contempt of man brought near to beast. My face I'll grime with filth. So he takes mud off the ground. Blanket my loins, elf all my hairs and knots, and with presented nakedness outface the winds and persecutions of the sky. The country gives me proof and precedent of bedlam beggars, who with roaring voices strike in their numbed and mortified arms pins, wooden pricks, nails, sprigs of rosemary, and with this horrible object, from low farms, poor pelting villages, sheepcotes and mills, sometimes with lunatic bands, sometimes with prayers, enforce their charity. So he's going to act like a bedlam beggar. Now, bedlam, which is a word in the English language to this day, was a precinct within London where the crazies were put. Basically, they didn't have asylums. They had an area of the city where effectively this something like that would take place. So it was famous for that. He's going to be a bedlam beggar. Some will curse them, some will pelt them with fruit or whatever and treat them abominably. Others will show charity toward them, but he's going to act like that. Now he's disguising himself. How is he disguising himself? By removing all trappings of civilization. He's going to take his clothes off. He's going to become more natural in one sense, right? He's not going out about as a nudist, but he is taking off the trappings of civilization, the marks of it. And he's going to act like he's lost his all civility furthermore. He won't speak in a rational way. All of those things he's going to strip away from himself. So once again, he's again a mirror or a representation of what Lear has done. But by doing this, he will be disguised. So he's disguised in the same way that Kent is disguised as Keyes. So again, there's all sorts of reinforcing images here of what is happening, and they all reinforce the theme that civilization having been stripped away, people have to act in order to survive, and it's just base survival. And yet, at the same time, it's madness. Madness has set in. So that's how he decides he's going to act. And we'll find that this is an interesting and rather apt disguise for him to wear, but we'll come to that when we meet Gloucester and he a little bit later on. Scene 4 brings us to Lear, which we've not seen in a little while, but he is now with his fool, his loyal fool. And they now come upon the servant Kent, who's, as we know, disguised as Keyes and in the stocks. And Lear has not yet seen his servant when he says this: "'Tis strange that they should so depart from home and not send back my messenger. As I learned," says a gentleman here, "the night before there was no purpose in them of this remove." "Hail to thee, noble master," says the Kent, and now he notices him for the first time. There's a man in stocks. He doesn't associate him with Kent, like what? "Hail to thee, noble master." "Huh? Makest thou this shame thy pastime?" "No, my lord." And then the fool: "Ha ha, he wears cruel garters. Horses are tied by the heads, dogs and bears by the neck, monkeys by the loins, and men by the legs. When a man's over lusty at legs, then he wears wooden nether stocks." So normally you get thrown into stocks for being an adulterer or whatever, or some. So that's what he's there for. Note again, he's being treated like an animal. Lear: "What's he that hath so much thy place mistook to set thee here? It is both he and she, your son and daughter." "No." "Yes." "No, I say." "I say yea." "No, no, they would not." "Yes, they have." "By Jupiter, I swear no." "By Juno, I swear aye." "They durst not do it. They could not, would not do it. 'Tis worse than murder to do upon respect such violent outrage. Resolve me with all modest haste which way thou mightst deserve, or they impose this usage coming from us. So it's a murder upon respect, manners, civility. They would not do this. My lord. Now note that Kent is now speaking in verse. Composed. Lear is flailing about. Kent composed. My lord, when at their home I did commend your highness's letters to them, ere I was risen from the place that showed my duty kneeling, came there a reeking post, stewed in his haste, half breathless, panting forth from Goneril, his mistress, salutations, delivered letters, spite of intermission, which presently they read. On those contents they summoned up their meanie, straight took horse, commanded me to follow and attend the leisure of their answer, gave me cold looks, and meeting here the other messenger, whose welcome I perceived had poisoned mine, being the very fellow which of late displayed so saucily against your highness, having more man than wit about me, drew. He raised the house with loud and coward cries. Your son and daughter found this trespass worth the shame which here it suffers. So now he's explaining what's just happened. But he admits that he had more man than wit at that point. He lost his temper. He was ungoverned. He let his temper get the best of him. And as a result, he's in the stocks. The fool speaks first in response to this. Winter is not gone yet, if the wild geese fly that way. Fathers that wear rags do make their children blind, but fathers that bear bags shall see their children kind. Fortune, that errant whore, ne'er turns the key to the poor. But for all this, thou shalt have as many dolors for thy daughters as thou canst tell in a year. How many dolors, as many sufferings, as many pains. Oh, how this mother swells up toward my heart. And then it says, hysterica, passio, down thou climbing sorrow, thy elements below. Where is the star? So he tries to control himself. This is not something we'd seen before. He is going to try and suppress his outrage. He needs to compose himself. So this is a part of the evolution of the character of Lear, as far as we know it at any rate. With the Earl, sir, here within. Follow me not. Stay here. Well, he can't help but follow me. He's in stocks. Follow me not. Stay here. Okay. And gentlemen, made you no more offense but what you speak of? None. How chance the king comes with so small a number? And then the fool, and thou hadst been set in the stocks for that question, thou well deserved it. In other words, you ought to know why he has so few. Like, are you the fool? That's why you're in the, because look what the daughters are like. What's wrong with you? You're an old counselor. Can you not see what's going on here? The fool is the wisest character of the lot. Why, fool? We'll set thee to school to an ant, to teach thee there's no laboring in the winter. All that follow their noses are led by their eyes, last, but blind men. And there's not a nose among 20 but can smell him that's stinking. Let's go anyway, I'll skip over the fool's thing. But he goes in then, Lear comes in, and he goes in to speak to Cornwall and Regan, but before he gets there, he manages to bump into Gloucester. And Gloucester tries to intercede and tries to be a sort of a buffer and intermediary here. Anyway, Lear says, 87, deny to speak with me? They are sick. They are weary. They have traveled all the night. Mere fetches, the images of revolt and flying off. Fetch me a better answer. Gloucester, my dear lord, you know the fiery quality of the Duke, how unremovable and fixed he is in his own course. Vengeance, plague, death, confusion. Fiery? What quality? Why, Gloucester, I speak with the Duke. The Duke of Cornwall and his wife. Well, my good lord, I have informed them so. Inform them? Dost thou understand me, man? I'm the king. You've told them, you've informed them. Tell them it's me. Right? Yeah, I'll let them know. They're going to come when it... Do you understand? So he's expecting the royal highness does not wait for somebody to answer. I've told them to come. Would with his daughter speak. Commands, 10 service. Are they informed of this? My breath and blood. Fiery? The fiery Duke? Tell the hot Duke no. And he's about to, lose his control. No. But not yet. Maybe he is not well. Infirmity doth still neglect all office whereto our health is bound. We are not ourselves when nature, being oppressed, commands the mind to suffer with the body. So maybe he's sick, and that's what's so he's trying to give him an excuse for the inexcusable conduct with which he's been treated. Foolish response, of course. It would be a gentlemanly response if he were being treated that way, but he doesn't want to see the obvious. He is actually willfully being and intentionally being abused. I'll forbear, though, but so he's learning patience. See this. I'll forbear, and am fallen out with more headier will to take the indisposed and sickly fit for the sound man. And now looking on Kent, death on my state, wherefore should he sit here? This act persuades me that this remotion of the Duke and her is practice only. Give me my servant forth. Go tell the Duke and his wife. I'd speak with them. Now presently bid them come forth and hear me, or at their chamber door I'll beat the drum till it cry sleep to death. And then Gloucester, I would have all well betwixt you. Desperately hoping for peace. Oh me, my heart, my rising heart, but down. Fool, cry to it, nuncle, as the cockney did to the eels when she put him in the paste alive. She napped him on the coxcombs with a stick and cried, down, wantons, down. 'Twas her brother that, in pure kindness to his horse, buttered his hay. Never mind. Okay, so now they come in, and Lear is angry, and of course being received by Cornwall and Regan, having left Goneril and Albany, expecting a better reception here and receiving nothing of the sort. On the contrary, he receives worse. Regan says, 157, good sir, no more. These are unsightly tricks. Return you to my sister. He did not expect this. He expected some kindly reception. On the contrary, he's been sent back. I'm not going to be against my sister. She will receive this badly. Back you go. So he's going to be pushed back and forth, the unwanted father. And Lear's response, and now he was on his knees begging his daughter, humiliating himself, and now he rises up. Never, Regan. She hath abated me of half my train, looked black upon me, struck me with her tongue, most serpent-like, upon the very heart. All the stored vengeances of heaven fall on her ungrateful top. Strike her young bones, you taking airs with lameness. So he's calling a curse upon his very daughter. And of course, his other daughter's not going to take this very well. Fie, sir, fie! You nimble lightnings, dart your blinding flames into her scornful eyes, infect her beauty, you fen-sucked fogs drawn by the powerful sun to fall and blister. He's wishing her ugliness and sterility in the end. And then Regan, oh, the blessed gods! So will you wish on me when the rash mood is on. No, Regan, thou shalt never have my curse. Thy tender-hefted nature shall not give thee o'er to harshness. No, he's associating everything with nature still, not with character. It's almost as if there are people, there are the good people and the bad people. There's not a common infection of nature. He doesn't have a right view of human nature. You won't be like that because you're kind in your nature, whereas she is a wicked hag. Her eyes are fierce, but thine do comfort and not burn. 'Tis not in thee to grudge my pleasures, to cut off my train, to bandy hasty words, to scant my sizes, and in conclusion to oppose the bolt against my coming in. Thou better knowest the offices of nature, bond of childhood, effects of courtesy, dues of gratitude. Thy half of the kingdom hast thou not forgot, wherein I thee endowed. Good sir, to the purpose. Who put my man in the stocks? And then there's a trumpet. Oswald comes in. Cornwall, What trumpet's that? I know it. My sister's. This approves her letter, that she would soon be here, to Oswald. Is your lady come? This is a slave whose easy borrowed pride dwells in the fickle grace of her he follows. Out, varlet, from my sight. What means your grace? He's offended that he is going to treat and speak ill of the servant. This is his father-in-law. It's the former king. How dare you speak to this man like this? What means your grace? Goneril now comes in. Who stalked my servant? Regan, I have good hope thou didst not know on it. Who comes here? Oh, heavens! If you do love old men, if your sweet sway allow obedience, if you yourselves are old, make it your cause, send down and take my part. To Goneril. Art thou not ashamed to look upon this beard? O Regan, will you take her by the hand? Why not by the hand, sir? How have I offended? All's not offence that indiscretion finds, and dotage terms so. You're an old man. Just because you call it so doesn't mean it is so. This is not an indiscretion. You're old. You lost it. Your appeal has no validity here. Oh, sides, you are too tough. Heart's gonna burst. Will you yet hold? How came my man in the stocks? Cornwall. I set him there, sir, but his own disorders deserved much less advancement. You? Did you? I pray you, father, being weak, seem so. If till the expiration of your month you will return and sojourn with my sister, dismissing half your train, come then to me. I am now from home, and out of that provision which shall be needful for your entertainment. Return to her. And 50 men dismissed? No, rather I abjure all roofs, and choose to wage against the enmity of the air. To be a comrade with the wolf and owl, necessity's sharp pinch. Return with her. Why, the hot-bloodied France, that dowerless, took our youngest born, I could as well be brought to knee his throne, and squire like pension beg to keep base life afoot. Return with her. So you're offering this as a good option. I'd be better off going to France and begging from him. Give me a little bit of a stipend. I'd do better off doing that. I'd rather do that. That's a worse, and I've disinherited my daughter. Return with her. Persuade me rather to be slave and sumpter to this detested groom, pointing at Oswald. At your choice, sir. I prithee, daughter, do not make me mad. I will not trouble thee, my child. Farewell. We'll no more meet, no more see one another. But yet thou art my flesh, my daughter, or rather a disease that's in my flesh, which I must needs call mine. Thou art now here comes the abuse. Thou art a bile, a plague sore, or embossed carbuncle in my corrupted blood. But I'll not chide thee. Let shame come when it will. I do not call it. I do not bid the thunder-bearer shoot, nor tell tales of thee to hide judging Jove. Mend when thou canst. Be better at thy leisure. I can be patient. I can stay with Regan. I and my 100 knights. Regan. Not altogether so. I looked not for you yet, nor am provided for your fit welcome. Give ear, sir, to my sister. For those that mingle reason with your passion must be content to think you old, and so. But she knows what she does. Is this well spoken? I dare avouch it, sir. What? 50 followers? Is it not well? What should you need of a more? Yea, or so many? Sith that both charge and danger speak against so great a number. How in one house should many people under two commands hold amity? 'Tis hard, almost impossible. Goneril, why might not you, my lord, receive attendance from those that she calls servants, or from mine? Why not, my lord? Regan, if then they chance to slack ye, we could control them. If you will come to me, for now I spy a danger, I entreat you to bring but 5 and 20. To no more will I give place or notice. I gave you all, and in good time you gave it. Okay, so in response to his diminishment, his response, but I gave you everything, and about time you did so as well. So they have an entitlement, a sense of entitlement, which they deserve this. There's no sense of gratitude. There's no sense of natural bond here, and so forth. And I'll read one portion of a speech here, and then I'm going to skip on to Act 3. Regan continues this all to the point of, never mind 25 servants, what need one? What do you need one servant for? Lear, oh, reason not the need. Our basest beggars are in the poorest thing superfluous. Allow not nature more than nature needs. Man's life is cheap as beasts. Thou art a lady. If only to go warm were gorgeous, why nature needs not what gorgeous wearest, which scarcely keeps them warm. But for true need, you heavens, give me that patience I need. You see me here, you gods, a poor old man, as full of grief as age, wretched in both. If it be you that stirs these daughters' hearts against their father, fool me not so much to bear it tamely. Touch me with noble anger, and let not women's weapons, water drops, stain my man's cheeks. No, you unnatural hags! I will have such revenges on you both that all the world shall. I will do such things. What they are yet I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep? No, I'll not weep. I have full cause of weeping, but this heart, and then the storm and the tempest breaks out in the background at that point, shall break into 100,000 flaws, or ere I'll weep. Oh, fool, I shall go mad, and flies out of the room in a rage, into the tempest, onto the heath, in his rage. But note that now they're talking about nature and human nature and civilization and all of those things. What do you need, and what is human needs, and what is the basis of humanity? What do we really need? Talking about love, talking about civilized conduct and so forth. You don't need any of these things. Well, what do you mean I don't need them? Do I deserve them? Would it be better to treat me that way? All of these things are at stake here, but he has begun this whole process himself right from the outset. But let us withdraw, says Cornwall, that 'twill be a storm. This house is little, says Regan. The old man and his people cannot be well bestowed. 'Tis his own blame, says Goneril, hath put himself from rest, and must needs taste his folly. For his particular, I'll receive him gladly, but not one follower. Goneril, so am I purposed. Where is my lord of Gloucester? Followed the old man forth. So Gloucester goes out with the king. And they will note this. Betrayal. That he sided with him. He is returned now. The king is in high rage. Whither is he going? He calls to horse, but will I know not whither. 'Tis best to give him his way. He leads himself. My lord, entreat him by no means to stay. Alack, says Gloucester, the night comes on, and the bleak winds do sorely ruffle. For many miles about there's scarce a bush. Cornwall, shut up your doors, my lord. 'Tis a wild night. My Regan counsels well. Let him go. Come out of the storm. So Act 3, Scene 1. So this violent social encounter gives way in Act 3 to a violent natural encounter. And the tempest there in Act 3, and again I said throughout Shakespeare's play, Act 3 builds up to a sort of crescendo, and there's at that point a movement in something. Things get as bad as they can be. And there's always at that point also in the third act some sort of sense of a possible resolution on the horizon, but however unlikely it be. But now is the bottom for Lear. Kent is still disguised as Keys. The gentleman and a gentleman with him, they come in separately. Kent asks him who's there besides foul weather, one-minded like the weather, most unquietly. I know you. Where's the king? And this is great speech. Contending with the fretful elements, bids the wind blow the earth into the sea, or swell the curled waters above the main. That things might change or cease, rears his white hair, which the impetuous blasts with eyeless rage catch in their fury and make nothing of. Strives in his little world of man to outscorn the to and fro conflicting wind and rain. This night, wherein the cub-drawn bear would crouch, the lion and the belly-pinched wolf keep their fur dry, unbonneted he runs, and bids what will take all. But who is with him? None but the fool, who labors to outjest his heart-struck injuries. Loyal, faithful, goes with him out on the heath and tries to do his office of a jester and get him to heal the wounds caused by his daughters. Sir, I do know you, and dare upon the warrant of my note commend a dear thing to you. There is division, although as yet the face of it is covered with mutual cunning twixt Albany and Cornwall, who have, as who have not, that their great stars throned and set high, servants who seem no less, which are to France the spies and speculations intelligent of our state. So again, he speaks of the civil war that's brewing beneath all this. What hath been seen either in snuffs and packings of the dukes, or the hard reign which both of them hath borne against the old kind king, or something deeper, whereof perchance these are but furnishings, but true it is, from France there comes a power into this scattered kingdom, who already wise in our negligence have secret feet in some of our best ports, and are at point to show their open banner. Now to you, if on my credit you dare build so far to make your speed to Dover, you shall find some that will thank you, making just report of how unnatural and bemadding sorrow the king hath cause to plain. I am a gentleman of blood and breeding, and from some knowledge and assurance offer this office to you. So Kent charges him to go to Dover. Dover's a port in the south east coast of England. It's where the Allied troops left when they were invading Normandy. There are famous white cliffs there, the White Cliffs of Dover. And they go down there where the French have already landed, and go there and tell them, because of course he knows that along with the French troops, Cordelia will be and will receive. She's come to help her father. He knows the loyalty of Cordelia. I will talk further with you, says the gentleman. No, do not. For confirmation that I am much more than my outwall, than I appear, open this purse and take what it contains. If you shall see Cordelia, as fear not, but you shall, show her this ring, and she will tell you who that fellow is that yet you do not know. Fie on this storm, because of course it's Kent's ring. It'll have his insignia and so forth, his stamp, right? She will know who it is that sent you. But out he goes, and now scene 2, the famous scene of the storm on the heath. And Lear is lost it. The storm is howling, but not as howling as Lear is. Blow, winds, and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos. Spout till you have drenched our steeples, drowned the cocks. You sulphurous and thought-executing fires. Vaunt couriers of oak-cleaving thunderbolts. Singe my white head, and thou all shaking thunder. Strike flat the thick rotundity of the world. Crack nature's molds, all germain spill at once, that makes ingrateful man. So now Lear is basically he wants the flood. As God judged the earth for the iniquity of mankind, Lear is judging the iniquity of mankind and welcomes the deluge. All of humanity deserves punishment. So he's moved away from the iniquity of some to the iniquity of all. Fool. Oh, nuncle, court holy water in a dry house is better than this rain water out a door. Good nuncle, in, ask thy daughter's blessing. Here's a night pities neither wise men nor fools. Rumble thy belly full, spit, fire, spout, rain, nor rain, wind, thunder, fire are my daughters. I tax not you, you elements, with unkindness. I never gave you kingdom, called you children. You owe me no subscription. Then let fall your horrible pleasure. Here I stand your slave, a poor, infirm, weak, and despised old man. But yet I call you servile ministers that will with two pernicious daughters join your high engendered battles against a head so old and white as this. Ho, ho, 'tis foul. Okay. So he says that the natural world is more moral and more just than his own daughters because it is effectively amoral. The rain that falls on the just and the unjust. It's more just than they are because they are only unjust. At least there's an equality here in the treatment he gets. He prefers that. Lear becomes a bit of a nature worshipper. He's a cynic. So he's moved from a Stoic to a cynic, if you will. The Cynics were an ancient school of philosophy that took their name from the word cynic arises from the Greek word for dog. They lay on the ground and slept outdoors and did not regard human beings to have any essential difference from the animal world, and they thought that it was wisest philosophy to abandon all pretenses of otherwise. So all the marks of civilization they eschewed, they avoided them. They regarded a more philosophical stance to avoid the pretense of civilization, the idea that mankind is superior over the created order. So again, I think modern environmentalists have much in common with the Cynics. Not all of it, but there's a sense of a moral superiority in the environmental movement and in the revolt against civilization and manners and so forth, and the disgust with the created order, or at least the moral civilized order, and they retreat to nature in order to have a higher moral ground, the moral high ground. That is more or less where Lear is now, living like a cynic. It is it's a resolution on his part. He doesn't just run out into the rain. He wants to be there. This is a more accurate depiction of the way things are. It's more moral than it was in my kingdom, in the presence of my daughters who were determined to treat me abominably. So now he's changing his perspective once again. To say that the changes in Lear are significant in the play. It is the tragedy of King Lear. Kent then comes on the scene. No, I will be the pattern of all patience. I will say nothing. Who's there? Says Kent, and the fool. Mary, here's grace and a codpiece. That's a wise man and a fool. Who's which here? Well, it'd be normally the grace would be the king and the codpiece would be the fool wearing the codpiece, right? But now it's unclear who's the fool and who's the codpiece. But wise man and fool, alas, sir, are you here? Things that love night, love not such nights as these. The wrathful skies gallow the very wanderers of the dark and make them keep their caves. Since I was man, such sheets of fire, such bursts of horrid thunder, such groans of roaring wind and rain, I never remember to have heard. Man's nature cannot carry the affliction, nor the fear. Again, the reference to man's nature. This is all play about human nature and the right understanding of human nature. How does the moral, civilized world relate to the natural world and furthermore to its own nature. There's a famous English proverb, manners maketh man. It's actually a motto of an English private school. Manners maketh man. So the thing that makes us most ourselves, and it's part of the educational project, humanity can refer to the creature, but it can also refer to the humanities, the things that make a man like a man. That the culture that allows a man to flourish as a man, as distinct from the other creatures that walk the earth. Lear has abandoned all of that, all humanity, the humanities, the culture, as a sham, a fraud. His daughters have likewise. So everybody's leveled out. They're living in the state of nature. Lear, let the great gods that keep this dreadful putter o'er our heads find out their enemies now. Tremble, thou wretch that hast within thee undivulged crimes, unwhipped of justice. Hide thee, thou bloody head. So he's calling for a better justice from the natural world and its pitiless flaying of all human life and all animal life. That's superior to what he experienced in his kingdom. Hide thee, thou bloody hand, thou perjured and thou similar of virtue that art incestuous, caitiff, to pieces shake that under covert and convenient seeming as practice on man's life, close pent-up guilts, rive your concealing continence and cry out these dreadful summoners' grace. I am a man more sinned against than sinning. It's unjust. There's a great line there. I'm a man more sinned against than sinning. Is it true? In the context of the play, is he a man more sinned against than sinning? King has two bodies. The king that wore the crown, and then the man. As the man without the crown, he is more sinned against than sinning. As the man who wore the crown, he is the greatest sinner of all. He brought about this whole ruin. This is about the right use of power, the legitimate use of power. You can't willfully depart from lawful order and expect legitimacy and expect moral conduct to ensue. So when he says, I'm a man more sinned against than sinning, well, he thinks as an old man divested of power. Of course he is. But when he was a man who had the authority of the crown, he was the greatest sinner of all. But Kent, alack, bareheaded, gracious my lord, hard by here is a hovel. Some friendship will it lend you against the tempest. Repose you there. So and eventually he agrees with this, and he takes him there, and the fool accompanies him. I'll conclude with just Act 3, Scene 3, and then we'll have to move on next time with the rest of the conclusion of the play. But Gloucester, alack, alack, Edmund, I like not this unnatural dealing, says Gloucester to his bastard son. Bastard in his progeny and bastard now in his character. Confesses, I like not this unnatural dealing. When I desired their leave that I might pity him, they took from me the use of mine own house, charged me on pain of perpetual displeasure, neither to speak of him, entreat for him, or any way sustain him. He regards this as unnatural. Why is it unnatural? Because there were oaths given. These were oaths of fidelity. There was a covenant between the king and his subjects, and the father and his daughter is a natural bond, and this is unnatural to go against that. Of course, he's saying it to the very son who's purposing the exact same thing. Most savage and unnatural, says Edmund. Go to, say you nothing. There is division between the dukes. Everyone keeps saying it now. Between the dukes, and a worse matter than that. I have received a letter this night. 'Tis dangerous to be spoken of. I have locked the letter in my closet. These injuries the king now bears will be revenged home. There is part of a power already footed. We must incline to the king. I will look him and privily relieve him. Go you and maintain talk with the duke, that my charity be not of him perceived. If he ask for me, I'm ill and gone to bed. If I die for it, as no less is threatened me, the king, my old master, must be relieved. There is strange things toward Edmund. Pray you be careful. And then he goes out. And now Edmund left alone, the villain on the stage. This courtesy forbid thee shall the Duke instantly know, and of that letter too. This seems a fair deserving, and must draw me that which my father loses, no less than all. The younger rises when the old doth fall. So now he will be Duke of Gloucester, the final betrayal, not just of the brother, but of the father. He will get what his ambition has already wanted, which is power. Power. It's all the will to power. No more, that's the play is presenting this just as much as Star Wars, the Emperor, Palpatine and stuff like unlimited power. Well, that's all, it's right here. Limitless power, no moral boundaries upon it. And yet everyone who has the power expects other people to act in a way that would be respecting of the moral authority of power. And that never happens. So anyway, but we'll come back to it, and we will conclude next class with Acts 4 and 5, and I shall see you then.